Hello and welcome to another Atypical Philosopher video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is the Ukraine War Update Extra. It's going on my main channel, Atypical Philosopher, but I will be alternating between putting them on this channel and my new one, ATP Geo. Please go and check out youtube.com/@ATP Geo. Anyway, where should we start with giving you a greater understanding and more information about the conflict in Ukraine? Well, let's go to Moscow and the kind of hashtag Russia on fire. Here we have very close to the Red Square. And it makes you wonder what, Russian population think when stuff like this happens. Or doesn't have to be, but quite possibly sabotage. This is a big fire's broken out in the center of Moscow. This is a situation in Komsomolskaya Square, a couple of miles from Red Square. Emergency services attacking the blaze. So you can see it's quite a considerable fire that's going on there. I think it's a warehouse in between sort of 3 different train stations. Here's another video scene. The square in Moscow is known as the place of the 3 railway stations, Kazansky, Leningradsky, and Yaroslavsky. So I think it's a warehouse there that's on fire. But yeah, just pretty big fire. There you go. Okay, here's Ukraine. Where should we go to next? Well, we are going to go to nowhere in particular, but we're going to have a little chat about drones. So this is a quick thread based on an interview in an article below with an operator of a Ukrainian heavy R18 multi-rotor drones. This means they have lots of rotors, and you can see they're quite big blades on those. Main points below. So this is main points from the article. Our main product is the R18 bomber. We started back in 2016 and it was a Scout, but it turned out to be so powerful that we realized it can carry quite a lot of shells. And at first it was used against infantry, but then the operators realized that it is much more effective to strike heavy equipment, and this is now its main feature. Our R18 drone carries 3 large armor-piercing cluster bombs. It is noteworthy that most Russian military equipment is built with strong armor only in front and the sides. From above, the armor is very thin. Sometimes our R18s are shot down. I have lost 2 large drones since the start of the full-scale Russian invasion. I lost one completely and the other flew back, but it was in such a condition that half of it needed to be replaced. But the threat is not only for the drone, but also for the operator, of course. But sometimes you realize that you worry more about the drone than about yourself. When the shelling starts and you need to lie down somewhere in a trench and you have the drone in the air and you wait for the drone to come back, you take a risk because its loss is very painful financially. Honestly and morally, it is already like a comrade in arms who works with you in pairs. It's fascinating insight into these operators here, as they almost form a bond with the drones that they operate, particularly these larger, more substantial drones. What about small drones that do not carry projectiles? If it is small, it will not be able to fly far. These are suitable for observation when the military enters a city and needs to see what's around a corner behind the fence. Small drones can help. And our drones, from which we bomb, fly 10 kilometers deep, and the deeper they fly, the greater the possibility of losing them, because the Russian air defense system works. By the way, the Russians don't spare very expensive missiles, which can be 10 times more expensive than a large drone. We have this opinion, and they simply make a report saying they shot down a Bayraktar or something else, and they get a medal for that. So there's a little bit of confusion possibly in the translation there, but it seems that they are taking drones down. So they do spare these expensive missiles, but they claim they're on Bayraktars, which is why you've had so many claims about more Bayraktars being shot down than the Ukrainians have had. When we manufacture new products, we consider radio frequencies and anti-EW, electronic warfare concepts. We bypass the enemy EW tactically and technologically. If there is an EW system, then we do not fly there. Let's put it this way, it makes the job more difficult, but not impossible. In the 2014-15 war, the use of drones was much less. Now, there are a lot of different drones, but it's worth remembering that the enemy cannot be destroyed by quantity, it must be destroyed by quality. So it's just an interesting little insight into the operation of these sorts of pieces of equipment. Okay, talking about drones, Washington Post, Iran to help Russia manufacture weaponized drones for war in the Ukraine. So lots of sharing of this news yesterday. Lots of different sources talking about this. The Washington Post reports that Iran and Russia have quietly reached an agreement to begin assembling hundreds of unmanned weaponized aircraft in Russia. That's absolutely fascinating and not good news for Ukraine. I think this axis between Russia and Iran is going to be a real thorn in the side of Ukraine. And if they can build and provide Ukraine with Russia with all of these drones and also missiles, cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, then that could prolong this conflict and give Russia a greater capability that they appear to be running out of. Yeah, bit of a worry that. Remember this one? Russian Izvestia and other media published a video which showed the destruction of a Ukrainian S-300 air defense system by a Lancet drone. I showed you this twice. I've talked about this twice. I talked about it on my previous extra video, I think, on the @ATPGeo channel. Now look at this. They struck their own abandoned installation but passed it off as Ukrainian. Liar, liar, pants on fire. So this is the idea that the Russians are now claiming that they have destroyed this Ukrainian installation, even though OSINT, open source intelligence, has shown this to have been in place since September in the Kherson Oblast as a Russian piece of kit with two missile systems nearby. And then after the liberation of the area, they hit this with a Lancet drone. And now they're claiming it's Ukrainian. And of course, it wasn't. But there had been people wondering whether this was a decoy or whether it was a real thing. If it was a decoy, then Russians have wasted a drone. If it's not a decoy, then the Russians have attacked their own piece of kit. And then the question is, have they attacked their own piece of kit because they don't want the Ukrainians to get it, or out of sheer incompetence? Both options are pretty possible there. Non-functional power supplies and telescopic radar antenna are missing. So the question is why that's there without its full set of bits and pieces associated with that. Right, a little bit of a discussion bit, maybe a bit of, I don't know, philosophy, psychology, whatever. I watched All Quiet on the Western Front, and it was a fantastic, very moving, very difficult film to watch. The adaptation of the, I think, 1929 German book about these guys, particularly one guy on the front in the trenches and going through all hell, right? And it's basically a great case for how war is horrible and pointless and a waste of life and horrific, and all of that times 10. And I found it interesting watching this. And the point of me speaking to you about this is check your biases, I guess. Check your baggage that you bring to your understanding of anything, right? And I watched this, and I've learned about World War One at school and throughout my life, and you learn about war, but we learn about war through particular lenses, right? So my idea of World War One was like, okay, British troops against the Germans, really tough, blah blah blah. And of course, that's not necessarily the case. Like, that's just completely ignoring or not even recognizing the fact that heaps of French died in this battle, in this war, and they fought in the trenches. And then the Americans came along, so the Americans might see World War One through their own lenses of like coming along at the end and maybe helping to finish the war or whatever, in the same way they do with the Second World War. And when the Americans think about the Second World War, they have a particularly skewed way of looking at it, in the same way that the British do, in the same way that the French will. You'll see each of these conflicts through the media through which that is, or by which that is presented. And so American media, that's books, newspapers, films over like 70 years, will be presenting World War II in a completely different way to the way it is presented in Japan, in Germany, in France, and the UK, and Canada, and Belgium, and the Netherlands, so on and so forth. Anyway, all this, I was watching this film, and I was expecting all the time the Germans to be attacking the British in the trenches in France. And actually, it's always attacking the French. And it's this kind of light bulb moment that I knew but didn't really like recognize explicitly. That of course, the French were obviously massively involved in the First World War. It's in France or Belgium, and these troops are fighting in the trenches, and it isn't just Germany against Britain. Like it's Germany here against the French, and the scene where he kills this French guy in a crater is absolutely horrific scene. And that whole the tanks that they're using in there, the French tanks. I did a bunch of research on those French tanks and found out a load of stuff about them. It's really interesting because I just always think about the classic, big British tanks that we used that were not very good, but they were the early genesis, the genesis of tank. But the French were involved in that, and the French were fighting this, and they were in the trenches. And check your biases, and just it like shifted my kind of shifted the paradigm for how I look at the First World War, and I need to recognise that it's not all about Britain. In the same way that all conflicts aren't all about your own country in that conflict. So when we watch the news and we're told how wonderful it is the UK are supplying X, Y, and Z, don't forget that Sweden, don't forget Estonia, don't forget Canada providing heaps of stuff. America doing X, Y, and Z. But yeah, absolutely amazing. But don't forget, you're all remember that there are all these other people involved, and that you are seeing everything through the lens of the media that is presenting you that information. And I am one of these lenses for you. So what I present to you is through my lens. So be careful, check what I say, but also just be aware that there's so much more going on than what I present, or that what your American TV channels or your UK TV channels or your French TV channels or your Australian TV channels are presenting. There's just more to it than that. Anyway, sorry, rant over. Not really a rant, just like, yeah. So HIMARS or MLRS, whichever, some form of multiple launch rocket system. Here we have. I'll turn the sound off. It's music mixed in with the sounds of the rockets. So each of those are shooting up six. It could well be HIMARS. 6 rockets, and each of those rockets is a precise attack on somewhere. It will hit to the meter. So these things, they're not like your grads where you're just blanketing an area with dumb munitions. These are all precise attacks. Each one of those 12 missiles will almost certainly hit precisely a target. And then let's see one from a different angle. Actually, this one fires off 9, I think. So this would be some other MLRS, some other system. But this is, so this just, again, I've done this time and time again, but I have to repeat myself because people don't watch all the videos. This is shoot and scoot. This is the ability of a vehicle like this to turn up on the side of a road, get its coordinates sorted quite safely, so it's probably not being tracked at the moment. Then it fires all of them off. It puts that down. It drives off. That's never going to be hit by counter battery fire, realistically. And all of those rockets will be precisely hitting their target, and this one just shoots off to the next place to do its thing, or whatever, to get rockets put back in there. Just power of shoot and scoot, obviously very important. Now, having just said, check your biases and be careful about looking everything through the lens of your own media. Here is the UK doing a really good job of providing support to Ukraine. The provision of Ukraine with enough anti-aircraft guns to protect its civilian infrastructure from the $20,000 Shahed 136 drones by UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was a major improvement in Ukraine's strategic position. It saves the Ukrainian SAMs for high-value Russian jets and missiles. So this is a good move by the UK, saying we recognise that these low-value drones are a real problem. We're going to help you by providing a bunch of things to combat them. So your expensive NASAMs and this and that can be used on much greater value targets, cruise missiles and aircraft. And here's Rishi Sunak has announced a new £50 million military aid package for Ukraine, in addition to the 125 anti-aircraft guns and technologies to counter Iranian UAVs. So that's great, 125 anti-aircraft guns. The assistance package will include dozens of radars, electronic warfare against drones. Sunak seems a legit guy to me. He's come out well from that visit, and he's got quite a lot of props from the Ukrainians and others who are like, yep, he's carrying on with the same kind of rhetoric as Liz Truss before him and Boris Johnson before her. So that's really good, a consistency from the UK approach. Okay, let's give props to other people. Sweden's ninth package of security assistance. Hey, Sweden, I haven't given you some big love. Here's some big love. For Ukraine is $282 million worth, which is more than the previous 8 packages combined. So this is a massive bit of assistance from Sweden. Awesome stuff. As expected, it includes air defense systems, brilliant, like we just talked about, vehicles, ammunition. In addition, Sweden also provides humanitarian aid for Ukraine and Moldova. So loads of stuff there from Sweden. Brilliant. And who else can we give props to? Estonia. Awesome. Is providing Ukraine with 27 buses, 13 electric generators. And this is super important because, that we saw in Dnipro, wasn't it, where an entire bus depot with all the city's buses was wiped out. And I would argue that is a massive war crime. That is an attack on civilian infrastructure that had absolutely no military value. Estonia is sending buses to help Ukraine restore its transport services, as well as electric generators to help schools and children's institutions. Absolutely vital. The Estonian ERR media outlet reported, so that's fantastic. And a German here popping in, Martin Zimmer saying, and besides 2,000 plus generators, also mobile water treatment truck delivered by Germany. Of course, not noteworthy, but I mean, this is absolutely vital kind of assistance. So, and we mustn't forget that Germany has really stepped up to the mark recently with a whole bunch of stuff they've been sending in, and 2,000 plus generators is massive. Water treatment, massively important. Okay, this piece in SEPA. So this guy saying, this is my piece on why US help for Ukraine is the best bang for buck the US will ever get. Okay, for some of those people who are thinking US are spending too much money on Ukraine, and for those people I've talked about politically on a certain part of the political spectrum who are anti giving Ukraine help, and that money should be going to, I don't know, building a wall to stop Mexicans getting in, or whatever their opinion is. This is an interesting piece by the Centre for European Policy Analysis. What does it say? Let's have a little skim read of it. So it's costing peanuts for the US to defeat Russia. Former President Trump and others in US, including some Democrats as well as Republicans, have criticized continued US support for Ukraine in its war with Russia. They've called for military and financial support to Ukraine to be cut, even ended. They downplay the risk from Russia and argue that the money should be spent at home. Yet from numerous perspectives, when viewed from a bang per buck perspective, US and Western support for Ukraine is an incredibly cost-effective investment. Altogether, the Biden administration received congressional approval for $40 billion in aid for Ukraine in 2022 and has requested an additional $37.7 billion for 2022 as well. On top of that, more than half of this aid has been earmarked for defense. These sums pale into insignificance when set against a total US defense budget of $715 billion for 2022. I remember seeing a couple of years ago that the US was spending as the same amount on defense, and this is in a non kind of war, Afghanistan at the time, but not really, as the next 70 countries combined. It's phenomenal what they spend. The assistance represents 5.6% of total US defense spending, but Russia is a primary adversary of the US, a top-tier rival not too far behind China, its number one strategic challenger. In cold geopolitical terms, this war provides a prime opportunity for the US to erode and degrade Russia's conventional defense capability with no boots on the ground and little risk to US lives. This is something that's been said quite a lot so far. This is, and I've said this is a proxy war, really, NATO against and the US against Russia. But you won't ever get a better opportunity for Russia to be taken out of the the war game, the geopolitical sort of taken out of that whole landscape. You won't get a better opportunity than this ever. And you can do it without losing any US or NATO troops. If you're willing to just front it up with the money, this is a really good investment if that is an important goal for you. So the Ukrainian armed forces have already killed, so many people, taking out all these bits of kit. And actually what you are doing by spending this money is facilitating that to happen. And the US military might reasonably wish Russia to continue deploying military forces for Ukraine to destroy. This is my theory I've been saying for a long time, which is actually seems rather than giving everything all at once, they're giving it in such a way that there's a long-term degradation of the Russian capability and capacity, and that's the best way of taking Russia out the game on a long-term basis. Meanwhile, replacing destroyed kit and keeping it up with the new arms race that it has now triggered with the West will surely end up bankrupting the Russian economy, especially an economy subject to aggressive Western sanctions. How can Russia possibly hope to win an arms race when the combined GDP of the West has $40 trillion and its defense spending amounting to 2% of GDP totals well in excess of $1 trillion when the disproportionate US defense contribution is considered? Russia's total GDP is only 1.8 trillion. Vladimir Putin will have to divert spending from consumption to defense, risking social and political unrest over the medium term and the real and soon to be present danger to his regime. Just imagine how much more of a bargain Western military aid will be if it ultimately brings positive regime change in Russia. Second, the war has served to destroy the myth that Russian military technology is somehow comparable to that of the US and West, so on and so forth, which it isn't, of course, and it's shown to be really lacking in comparison to to the Ukrainians actually. Loads of innovation from Ukraine have been, with aid, technological aid from the US has been really evident here. So, third, the revelation that Russia's defense industry is something of a Potemkin village also is not really what anyone thought it was. Also generates another strategic and diplomatic win for the US. Countries eager to secure defense capability to meet their own threats, think of Turkey, India, Pakistan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, might have opted for cheaper value Russian defense offerings. However, with the quality and capability of this equipment now being questioned because of poor battlefield performance, they will likely be vying to acquire a better US kit. So going forward, as far as the military industrial complex is concerned in the US, you're going to have lots of countries now thinking Russia's kit is rubbish. Let's go and get the better stuff from US, which has been proven on the battlefield, so on and so forth. And fourth, helping Ukraine beat Russia surely sends a powerful signal to China that the US and its allies are strong and determined. So again, this puts off China invading Taiwan and is a good investment as far as the US is concerned in sending a signal to China. And fifth, the war in Ukraine is encouraging and accelerating the energy transition in Europe, but also Europe's diversification away from Russian energy. Europe is desperately trying to source alternate energy supplies, and the US liquefied natural gas is proving to be the obvious beneficiary. So again, from the US point of view, there are 5 good reasons here why actually spending this amount of money is a super good investment. And this will, when you think about it, the US have actually been quite easily giving this money away. Like the Biden administration have been quite happy to do so in big numbers. They're not going to be doing that if they don't know that it's going to be giving them a good return on investment. You can absolutely be guaranteed that they're thinking about all these things. That this isn't just about the moral position of supporting Ukraine. And I know that sounds really mercenary, but absolutely 100% the US will be thinking in mercenary terms. They'll be thinking in economic terms. They'll be thinking in geopolitical terms, and not just in, oh, poor Ukraine, they've been attacked by a big bully, we need to go and help Ukraine because that's unfair. No, this is going to, right, we need to take out Russia. We need to send a message to China. We need to support our own military industrial complex. We need to be selling our liquefied natural gas to Europe. All of these things are going to be plugged into the calculation that this money is a good investment. And this article says this money is a good investment. It is actually relatively cheap. So those who are thinking the US shouldn't be providing this money, have a little think about that. Okay, sorry, I spent too long banging on. This is going to be a very long one, isn't it? Here's a great bit of camouflage for a Ukrainian BMP. It's camouflage in basically a rubbish tip. This is brilliant. And it actually fires there. It's actually firing from there. I mean, don't know what good that gun's going to do particularly, but how well camouflage is that? It's not just about painting this stuff in green and beige and making it look like a tree. Make it look like a rubbish dump. Cover it in rubbish. Brilliant. Loved it. And then another bit. This I meant to show these at the end because they're just quite nice and amusing. I quite like this. So look at that. That is, you've just walked into a forest. Oh, hey, what's going on here?
Слава Україні!
Peekaboo!
Героям слава!
Слава нації!
Смерть ворогам!
В'єтконг, блядь.
Love it. Just love it. Nice. Nice bit of fun. You can still have fun in war. And in fact, stuff like that is vital for morale. Okay, the last thing I'm going to say is it's winter. Winter is coming. You know, I don't want to quote Game of Thrones here, but, you know, winter is there. And in certain areas, it has come and there is snow. So just have a thought about these guys and how difficult their daily lives will be as we sit in our warmth at home, looking at videos of them. Another one here. Just, you know, it is cold, it is snowing, and that will change things. But this guy's pretty happy. I don't know what that is. Oh, maybe that was inappropriate to show. But again, here we have, you know, someone else showing how it is really, really cold and snowing, and here they are, you know, having to manage their equipment in this kind of in these freezing temperatures and in these conditions. So snow is there. That will change the war to some degree. It'll be interesting to see how it changes it and who will benefit the most. Anyway, there you go. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. And please support my channel in any way you can. And pop over to ATP Geo. That's ATP Geopolitics, my new channel. The link will be in the description. As ever, question everything, particularly yourselves, and thank you so much for being here.